Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. What you want to talk about? Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. What you want to talk about? Kitchen talk, conversations that cook. Kitchen talk, Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends.
Lisa, Lowe, JT, and friends. Y'all ready to pick up some conversation? Come on.
Kitchen talk.
Let's talk.
Hey.
Welcome back.
I know, right? Kitchen Talk CTC.
Conversations that cook.
And they do.
Gonna have a hot one tonight.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's gonna be it's gonna get a little sizzling in the kitchen. So we have with us Adner Marcelin. See, I knew I was gonna mess it up.
Mr. Marcelin, President
Marcelin, yes. And I call myself, I'm a theater person, so I should be able to do this, right?
Hey, it happens. I have a complicated last name, so I completely get it.
So he is the president of the Tallahassee Branch of the NAACP. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for hanging out with us in the nighttime, 9 o'clock at night.
It's becoming the new normal hours in the city, unfortunately. So I'm glad to be here with you all.
It is. Thank you so much. So when I was thinking about what this show was going to be about tonight, a Marvin Gaye song came to my mind. And so I titled the show, What's Going On?
Absolutely.
So the lyrics in the Marvin Gaye song, mothers are crying, brothers are dying.
Still
What's
relevant.
going on? Don't, punish me with brutality. What's going on?
What's going on? That's
What's going on? And sometimes when you live and grow up in a city and you just think it's the best place in the world and it's so special, and you really don't think you have the problems that other cities have or bigger cities have. And then it just kind of, gets you that, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. The stuff you read about in the news, it happens right in your city as well. Absolutely. So I wanted to have this conversation, like, what is going on? I don't even know where to begin. So let's begin with the fact that a grand jury says that none of the 3 recent officer-related shootings warrant an indictment. Let's start there.
Florida, for those of you who are
right. It's my fault. In beautiful Tallahassee, Florida, the capital city.
The capital city.
The capital city.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I'll open up by just saying, certainly no one wins when there's a loss of life in a situation of loss in life. And what I'm imploring to our leaders is that, we take these shootings and take a lesson out of it. There was a life loss, and we certainly don't want that loss to be in vain. I believe, right now, as we're looking into our community and the things that are going on, we have 3 very different shootings, but that resulted in a use of force unfortunately, by the same department, Tallahassee Police Department, and the videos were released. While I respect the grand jury's decision and outcome of each of the cases, I think what we needed to do was that we needed to look at releasing the information in a different way. And as you can see from the protest this weekend to the subsequent arrest on both the day before and on yesterday late night, and continuing on with more arrests pending today, you know, this is where we are as a community. And I've been challenging each and one of our elected officials. You know, this is a turning point for our community, and we have an option of either making a change, or we have an option of just continuing to do things the additional way. And so I have meetings scheduled with several of our elected officials, and I'm hoping that they choose that path of making Tallahassee that great community that we all know that we can be.
Very interesting. I know a lot goes into making these decisions on if they were justified, if police officers are justified in using deadly force. And then, of course, there's public opinion of, did it really have to come to that? So, and I don't know how much we all can speak to that. I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I can't really speak that much to it or know that much about the law. My degree is in theater, so.
I think our path takes us different places. At Florida State University, I majored in criminal justice. That's one thing that people don't, know. And my intended career path at the time was to be a law enforcement officer. I then felt that my skills could probably be better used in the legal community. And so I decided to take a turn and go to law school and go into that arena. However, I will say this, when we're looking at a grand jury and what the job of the grand jury is to do, it is really a very secretive proceeding in nature. And there's no lawyers allowed. There is no other people allowed. It is all done in secrecy and privacy. And it is really the prosecutor and the state attorney's job to go in there and to present information, which is supposed to be the facts of the case, and to either get a true bill, which is an indictment, or a no true bill, which is a no indictment. In these situations, the reason that Attorney Crump, who I work for at Ben Crump Law, and our firm are firmly against grand juries is because you have a discretion to introduce evidence that sometimes is irrelevant to the case. As we saw in the case of Michael Brown and Ferguson that we worked in, there were people testifying before that grand jury who the state attorney knew what they weren't even at the scene, but they got to testify because you can bring everybody into that, and you can bring information and evidence that necessarily would not come into a court proceeding, because court proceedings will be governed by the rules of evidence. Here, there are no rules. And so really what is said about a grand jury is that if most times that a state attorney wants an indictment, they'll present the information in a way to get that indictment. If they don't want the indictment, they'll present the information in a way where the indictment won't come back. And so really simply charging someone and going through a trial, presenting the evidence if there's cases there, in certain circumstances gives everybody a fair day in court. And that's mostly what the community has asked for. However, there are other situations such as these police shootings, after reviewing the video and the evidence that was released by the officials, where I said, what was the reasoning for us holding the decision? As a state attorney, you have to make tough decisions. And sometimes that includes law enforcement who the state attorney advises. And sometimes that includes prosecuting your friends or disciplining your friends. And sometimes that's a very tough thing to do as a leader, is to hold your friends accountable when it is necessary. In these particular shootings, I unfortunately, the way that I see it, these are cases that did not need to have the tensions in our community risen to that level. This should have been an open and shut case based on the evidence, to open and shut them. It is certainly the state attorney's decision to go to a grand jury or to make the decision himself. I believe that this was something that should have just came in, looked at the evidence. It was super clear. You just shut the case and you tell the community what you do. Also in presenting, the decision of a grand jury, because a lot of people don't understand, and these are very tenuous times, within our African-American community. We need to make sure that we allow our prosecutors and our state attorney, they need to meet with the community and kind of give an explanation. Don't dump a decision which caused the protest and just do it at what I call the 4 o'clock dump and switch. You know, I appreciate the state attorney for releasing the video, but the method of it wasn't, you know, the best that I could see. The families did not get to see the video in advance because they were in such a rush to get it out to the community, where even, you know, Malik Jackson, who was fatally stabbed in the Tony McDade shooting, their lifeless bodies and things like that were posted on the internet, and that upset his family, who should have been covered, in my opinion, under Marcy's law. And now we have these vague laws that is supposed to protect victims, and now we probably have to go relitigate. You know, if you decide to reveal yourself under Marcy's law as the victim, are you not covered no longer moving forward in the future, which was the city's basis? Yeah. Last night, after a 7-hour contentious city hall meeting, a last-minute motion at the end of the meeting resulted in them pulling the footage off of the website. However, if you want the footage, you can make a public records request and get it for yourself. While it's, you know, 100% not blurring the video, it is at least a show of respect for the family, and I certainly will commend the city and the city commission for that motion. However, these are things that I question of, you know, we have to do it in a different way, and it's a time not to be attacking one person or another, but I think for our community to get forward with our leaders and say, we hope that we don't have a shooting, but if we do, what can we do different? What can we take away from these situations so that the next family doesn't have to incur harm, so that the response that the city got now doesn't go? You know, and I think it is very important as community members that we start paying attention and holding our leaders accountable, because elections matter. The people in office determines your charges. If they're going to be protesters that are being now charged with felony battery on law enforcement officers and resisting arrest without violence, these are criminal records. We are putting more and more youthful offenders in the criminal justice system, and that's not a good look for Tallahassee.
No, it's not.
We have rated high in crime, not a good look.
It hurts our community as a whole.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I really want to say first, thank you to the officers that do a good job. You know, I know a lot of officers in the city, they do a good job. They do what they need to do. They raise their families, they go home, and that's what they want, right?
Absolutely.
When you have situations where this may pop up and accidents or whatever you want to call it happens, and there's no recourse, or like you said, you know, we haven't learned from our past mistakes, and not just the mistakes that were made here in Tallahassee, but the mistakes that are made across the country.
Yeah.
At this point, you should be looking at, you know, what's been happening and saying, okay, we need to have some type of training so that we, whatever city that we're in, we don't have the same thing happen to the same thing that happened in Ferguson doesn't happen here. The same thing that happened in Miami doesn't happen here. The same thing that happened in what's that? Tampa, you name it, Sanford, you name it.
Absolutely.
At this point, all those situations should be grounds for us to learn and grow. And I think that's the biggest thing with law enforcement. When is it going to be where, you know what, we know that was a mistake, we're not going to do it again? Unfortunately, we keep seeing it again and again. And now it's not in just, you know, oh, one time, okay, you know, that happened. It's becoming more and more frequent. And that to me is the biggest problem.
I think the thing that gets me is I feel like Tallahassee is small enough where the community and law enforcement know each other enough for these kind of incidents maybe not to happen, but apparently that's not the case.
You know, I'll interject there, and I was explaining this to some of our leaders this morning, you know, based on how I felt. I was very critical of the city's process on hiring a police chief. I asked very tough questions, and I asked very tough questions directly pinpointed at diversity, how we understand each other, and the importance of that quality in our police chief. I know to some in the community, it was taken as you're being negative, you're not, it became a racial issue about whether one person or not, and that you favored. And, to me, I only owed an explanation to the chief of police, which I sat down and gave him my reasoning. But as soon as the shooting happened, it became evidently clear, how far of a disconnect that we are in members of the community. I told everybody, my tenure as NAACP president, I'm done with the press conferences. I'm done with the community meetings where we discuss over and over and over what we already know as a community. What is the issue? The problem is, and what we have to come to a realization is, are we prepared to come out, and are we prepared to discuss and come up with the solutions? I'm here for solutions. At this point, we are all educated on those issues, and I refuse to waste any more of my volunteer time at that. This is a volunteer position to sit down and continue to address systematic issues that are prevalent all over America.
Right.
You bring up a great point, because even getting out, and I know there's a piece for that, to peacefully protest, but it's like we're doing the same thing. You're playing the same game over and over again, and we're not getting any results. So, what would be the best thing to do moving forward? What do we need to do? I know voting is the one thing that everybody says.
You know what? And
got to vote. But we had this conversation with some past guests, and I still hold true to, if you're going to vote, we need to vote for the right people, right?
Absolutely.
And we have people in place that we're voting for, but that doesn't mean that they have our best, they don't. And then we vote for them, and then we end up in this same type of situation. So what do we do? I have a solution, but I want to hear from you guys.
Well, I will just start here from what I've been telling the community. Number one, we have to get more civically engaged. Okay. I know the city hall meetings are at 4:00 in the afternoon, and that's a time where most of us as working citizens have to be at work. But we, the people, it's not them, the people, it's we, the people. We have to make a greater demand for them to move that time, or as some cities have done, move it to the weekends. This is a paid position. You're paid to be our commissioners. Maybe we need to accommodate and move it, during the weekend, so that we can get what we need to have done. Number two, there are a lot of advisory committees that the mayor can appoint for black people that people don't know anything about. I also chair the Human Relations Council, which goes out into the community. I sit on a board with diverse. We have LGBTQ community. We have our elder care community. We have our Muslim and Asian communities. We have almost law enforcement community represented. We have a lot of people that we go out into the communities. We hear the issues, and we serve as a liaison between our city and this actual council and city employees. I tell people, go out, research the advisory committees, become a part. A lot of the major decisions that affect us day to day happen with our local elections. And so we've got to, not only on the city part, but also on our county commission meetings, you have to get there. There's also a blueprint meeting that happens. I think it's Mondays at some 9:00 in the morning or something of that nature. But that is when the infrastructure and the development, like the new civic center that they're planning to build downtown, these are when these decisions are being made. And so when we tune ourselves out of government and we tune ourselves out of being civically engaged, the decisions are made for us. And just like there was a major backlash and we had a grand community turnout against putting a police station on the south side, 3 jam-packed town hall meetings and jam-packed city hall before city hall reversed course, that is to the level we need to show up at every meeting that we can and make sure that we have representatives at every single meeting. We cannot entrust, just sending a representative elected figure to have our best interests at heart. So that is another suggestion that I have. And lastly, I told everybody, that voting is important too, but also be careful with the amendments. Be very careful when it comes down to, especially the judiciary. that is a very, they cannot campaign in the manner that other officers can campaign, because there are rules set forth by the Judicial Qualification Committee that as a member of the judiciary or expiring member, there are rules that they must conform themselves to. So you need to really know the record of these individuals that are coming before you to serve in our community. Please don't just vote down the ballot Democrat or down the ballot Republican, because like you said, sometimes I always support the best candidate. I'm a member and a precinct person of the Democratic Party, and I have an oath to, support the Democratic Party, but I also have a bigger oath to my community and to the people that I serve. And as I told everybody, I have to do the right thing. If that means letting go of a position to support the right person who stands up for the right thing, then so be it. I'd have to lose whatever position I have to come. But again, I think it's very, very, very important that you all get civically engaged and make sure that you're part of the decision making. I know it's tough right now. I know that there's a lot of people, who can't make the meetings, but they're broadcasted online and you can tune in. And if you have concerns, reach out to your commissioners, reach out to the, city manager, and make some demands on things that are going on. And again, there's a lot of ways that change can come about, but I think that the city commission makes the most day-to-day change if you live within the city, and the county commission if you live in the county. And again, I would recommend that everybody take an active part in government, because it's really affecting the day-to-day lives of everybody in the city and county.
Yeah.
The judges are big. I mean, especially with our youth. I mean, just our people, period. When our I don't just want to say kids, but when our youth get in trouble for some minor thing and have to pay the maximum price because we voted in the wrong person, that hurts. And just like what's happening now, I mean, the protesting, the protesting was a waste. You put a curfew on, knowing that, once this thing gets out, people are going to come out.
Well, the protest was actually, JT, I'm sorry. Hey, JT.
Hey, JT.
What were you saying something while Adner was talking? What did you say?
Oh no, when he was saying that we got to move everything to the weekend, we are off. Ain't nobody trying to do nothing.
We serve the people. So, I hear it, but there's too long. Hey, if you can get the time back from the weekdays from being 7 to 8 hour commission meetings and get that reduced, then maybe you'll see the need. But 7 hours after you done did a long full work day, and remember, the commissioners work part-time. This is not a full-time gig. So, when you out there doing 8-9 hours plus your work day on top of that, it's a long day.
Yeah, it is a long day.
It is a long day.
So what I was gonna say was the curfew was this weekend, but the protest was the weekend before, right?
Well, the protest that they implemented for the curfew was, and let me just say this, and I've spoken with Commissioner Deloge and a lot of our officials, and they can say it for a fact. The protesters have been peaceful all along from the very beginning, and they should be commended for that. What they use as a basis, and I'm going to say it's the NAACP's position that this was a faux, this was just a curfew that lasted a week, and it's in my opinion that it was to facilitate the grand jury decision. In our opinion, a breach of people's constitutional rights to freedom of assembly and their rights to, free speech. It was to stifle that. But at the end of the day, what we said is it is not justifiable to us that you would take an isolated incident where you had a counter protester at a known location where the protesters were, bring a gun to a protest, get into a fight where you point weapons at people. And then we got this complicated stand your ground law that lets him walk, and now it's under investigation again. Don't know what they're doing with that. But in that aspect in our community, that was last week. If the urgency existed, then you should have put the curfew in place last week.
Right.
You wait 1 week later to do it and then cite that that's where the curfew is. People have questions, and that's why, yes, I'm requesting meetings with everybody, because you don't give nobody a pass because they look like us. I've requested a meeting with Sheriff McNeil because you have to explain it. And at the end of the day, a lot of the officials, when they get run out of, whatever answers they're giving me, they refer, well, the sheriff requested it. So down to the sheriff we'll go. Hold everybody that you put in office responsible equally. No one gets passes. And at the end of the day, I do understand that there may have been some credible intelligence that people are buying guns. I, for one, went and obtained a concealed weapons permit class this weekend. And the guns are off the shelf. So yes, I'm like, that might be the intelligence y'all have, that people are buying guns. But when I went to the class, it was jam-packed and it wasn't a secret. Every gun was flying off the shelf. And it's certainly citizens' rights. I'm hearing that there were counter protesters were purchasing them. At the end of the day, I saw no real legitimate reason. I'm a little bit disappointed with the curfew, because I said, we mentioned that part of the curfew was to prevent these pop-up parties. I see one on where it's under investigation at probably a big nighttime pool party that violated the curfew. But when it was reported at the end of the curfew, no one was cited or arrested or even stopped for violating the 11 o'clock curfew, yet there's incidents under investigation. I'm confused. If you're out past 11, there's a curfew in place, enforce the curfew. But if that's nobody's real intention to enforce it, then what can you, what can you do? And, I think, for us, we've been fighting these same battles since the NAACP's inception in 1909. We have been doing the same protests and things like that. There are other things that are very, very concerning for me. What was most concerning at this protest was seeing them bring out dogs and canines. It happened to be in the area. If you understand, I said, is this Selma or Tallahassee? We cannot
again, this is
to the protest. I don't care if it was in the area. That K9 unit is not for that purpose. Those are the same intimidation tactics they use in the civil rights movement. And if you're not careful to remind people and to call them out, we will repeat ourselves. And so
that's exactly what we're doing.
Is to stand with our young people, to support their rights, to denounce the bogus, trumped up charges that people are getting. Because like I told them, what did y'all think y'all were going to, officials? I don't think anybody went out there with an intention to harm a law enforcement officer. They're locked hands, hand in hand. Yeah, things are going to get gray and messy in that area. But is it worth giving our young people criminal records when people have done far worse and have walked with no charges, slaps on the wrist? Look around the country, as I told the leaders that called me today. Every protest you see, tell me one that you see just on the sidewalk. When you and again, let's not be hypocritical. There was a city endorsed march for protests that the NPAC participated in, a lot of organizations participated in. We didn't march on the sidewalk. We marched right up and down the street and we were there with the police officers. So when they're supporting something, is it okay? And then when you don't support it, it becomes you got to get off the street. Everybody should have the right to protest. And this decision being dropped us on 4 o'clock, I personally believe that the students should have been allowed to just be in the streets where they normally do it every other week, and traffic should have been redirected. Yes, you may have been, inconvenience for a couple of minutes or whatever, but we have to stand up and stand with our people. We cannot just get up, go home, and leave them, because these children that are fighting, these people that are in the streets around the nation, they're keeping people accountable, because there are many other families who live in rural areas that cannot get this type of attention because no one seems to care about their cases. And so for the longest that I remember, Tallahassee, TCC, FAMU, FSU community, as well as the general community have stood firm against injustices in this community. And again, when we don't agree, I challenge all of our leaders that we don't run away from issues. We get together, we compromise, we find tough situations. And I believe that arresting the protesters just put us on a step back, because not only did they arrest protesters, they arrested some of the very same protesters that was working hand in hand with our police department to find solutions.
Wow.
So now that you arrest them, I asked the question today, what do we do with the progress we made? Are we done now? Or like, how do you entertain that conversation? Do you
hope they drop the charges?
Defending?
I hope they drop the charges, because again, that was my solution to the problem. We have to really start grooming and raising leaders. At the end of the day, that is it. We have to start doing it. And you have some great, like as you stated, we have some great students who are out here, they want to make a difference. They want to see justice. They want to see the right side of things. But they get caught up in things like this, and it takes away the energy, not just for the progress that we need to make in terms of the Black American community, but the community at large, right? Again, we keep making the same mistake because they're not learning from the mistakes of the past. And I'm not talking about 1960, although I still think they haven't learned from those mistakes.
They have not.
I mean, why would you bring the K-9 unit out there when it was already a peaceful protest? I think, you have people who want to add fuel to the fire. So we have to find out who these people are. And it's important to hold their own people accountable too. And just as we have to do the same to our own community members. Hey, you wrong, bro. We can't have that. The same thing needs to happen on all sides. If you're wrong, you need to be called out. You need to be put out, period.
Right. So to me, it's very interesting that we talking a decades and decades old institution, the NAACP, and we still are fighting the same fights.
111 years later, and we're still here,
fighting the same fights.
It is. And again, like I said, we've got to make some significant changes. And one of the initiatives that I'm trying to get on the ground, as Fran has said, is training leaders to run, leaders that will represent us without interest. Not getting a check here for this and this check for your organization in exchange for presenting this candidate. And that's why I tell people, voice your opinion. If you go to a church and your pastor is bringing somebody there and there's something in the community going on and your pastor has not stood out and said, hey, yeah, you're doing this and it's affecting our community, challenge your pastor. Stop bringing people before us in the Black community that find it convenient for election cycles.
That's true.
Okay, just like I silence everybody that pays their money in the NAACP, and the only time we seen them is when we collected that one first membership check. Hadn't seen them at a meeting, but got a lot to say. You're just a financial member. I don't consider you an active member with a voice. If you want to know what's going on, show up and be a part. But you can't contribute. We'll definitely take the money and put it towards the cause and the issue. But again, like I told them, it's this decades-old tactic where companies and people just donate to the NAACP as if that satisfies their diversity quota and their diversity initiative. We are more than a fundraising organization. And again, I'd rather be a broke organization standing on the side of justice than a rich one that is too in the pockets of our community partners that we're afraid to stand up and say what's right. So I'm not the most orthodox president that the NAACP had. But I promised everybody from day one, you was going to get a real president. And I to the community that's what I've delivered. So
and we need that.
We don't know your name, but we see you the short man with the glasses on TV. I said, okay, well, as long as I got the support of our community and holding these issues the right way, I'm certainly glad at the progress that we have made. And I'm hoping that it's not too late, that we can turn around because there's no rush to these charges. They can be dismissed at any time. But my hope is that we find some sort of deferred agreement and let's get creative. Let's be the Tallahassee that we need. Let's defer these prosecutions and no pros them, and even the incident with the gun. Let's just move past those issues, get these people in a room, and see, can we mend our differences and make this community better?
Right.
Because the national press picking up and the state press that have already started calling me and are monitoring the treatment of protesters here is giving this community a bad rep. And I don't know about you all, but I'm tired. At least the other people are getting a paycheck for their job. I'm a volunteer position. It's tiring. You know,
But you volunteered for it, though. You volunteered for it.
Hey, you're right. And I'm definitely, it is a but I will say this: respect is earned and not something that can be taken.
Yes,
and
sir.
When I met these protesters, I met them on the street. No one gave me an invitation to go meet with them, but I sat down with them. I've been to some of their houses. I have broke bread with some of them and learned where their frustration and where their anger is coming from. And I've also sat them down with the necessary city officials. I want to thank Commissioner Nick Maddox from the county, who has sat officials down to answer them. All of the concerns weren't addressed, but in some of the ones we were able to take care of some of the issues and form some partnerships. And I just don't want to see with these recent arrests that we throw all that stuff down the drain. I think that we can, comment and tweet on TV shows and award shows. We can send a letter or an email to our people and our city commissioners, our state attorney, and let them know how you feel as a citizen, because they're going to do what the majority of the citizens want. And if they don't hear from us as the community, then, then we won't be able to help everybody. And again,
let's Jamal, can you put that question back up? Let's take a look at this. So hi Sandra, thank you for watching. It says, are the NAACP and other organizations challenging the courts on a national drift towards criminalizing protest and rights to assemble? I thought that was really strange when they said they didn't have a permit. That's why they were shutting it down.
Again, this is something that the city has just chosen to enforce, that based on that one isolated incident, that they're going to now start this permitting procedure. You do have your constitutional right to freedom of assembly. But as I told them today, I'm probably a little radical in my views, but I'll say this. When injustice doesn't have a calendar book that I can schedule an appointment, so my response is not going to be calendared either. If it's something that's not going to ride, we're going to speak, we're going to go out on the streets, we're going to do what we need to do to promote peace and safety. We try to operate, and we advise everybody to operate within the confines of the law. But what has happened is very, very disturbing. But people aren't out there just to be out there. They're out there for a very specific reason, and that's to address injustice. And so at the same tone, when you want people to comply and you want people to do what you want to do, you have to be prepared to address injustice in our community. Mm-hmm. Some of our leaders are tone deaf. They see what you want to see. There's so much going around the country. While I applaud some of the corporations like Starbucks and American Airlines for finally getting the message and allowing their employees to wear Black Lives Matter paraphernalia and pins because they realize the value of Black lives. And it's not to say that, there's no such thing as a blue life. Law enforcement is a life. No one was born blue. What we're saying when we say Black Lives Matter does not mean that your life doesn't matter. Right. What it means is that we need to pay attention to a sector of our community that is not getting equal treatment based on the color of their skin.
Right.
I also had to address with them, don't play little word games that fall into the narrative. I'm not going to say for whose narrative, but we all know. When you say defund the police, we're not saying that we want a community with no law enforcement officials.
Right.
What we're saying is we want you to redistribute the funds going into our police department and bring in alternatives that don't lead to deadly force. You all are educated people in the law enforcement community. You can understand that.
Right.
You can understand that. And the same things that were proposed here that's, probably wasn't well received, they initiated it in St. Peter, Tampa. One of those police departments initiated it weeks later. So again, we can continue to say what's going to work and doesn't work. What we know is what we have is not working. While the crime rate has gone down, we have been, over the last 5 years, some of the highest crime rates per capita in this city and county alone. It is an embarrassment. I don't know if you've felt it in your pockets, but due to the crime rate and car burglaries and everything like that, my insurance rates are through the roof. And when I call and ask them what's the reason for the increase, they're like, well, the crime rate in your area pays. You know, and so that now, because we have to pay out on crime, you have to pay higher premiums, even though you didn't do anything. And so it does have a cost to it. And again, as I've been a strong advocate, I don't mince my words. Our law enforcement agencies have to get out the cars and go back to the old school policing ways of walking these communities around and things of that nature. When I hear all of these parties going on that are under investigation, my first question is, where was law enforcement? You might not notice 10 people gathering, maybe not 20, 40 to 50 people, 200 to 300 cars on the south side of that gas station party where somebody was brutally shot and killed. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. I don't know what we have to do. Do we have to get in the cars with you and ride and show y'all to walk out the car and say, hey, neighbor, how are you? I'm Officer such and such. What's going on in your community? Anything I need to know about? Make advocates, because when you have friends and people that support you, they'll start to see you less as a law enforcement officer and start to see you more as a valued member of that community. I am like a broken record saying this, and this is not on Chief Rebel by any means. I've been saying this since his predecessor, Stephen Outlaw. I've said that since Michael DeLeo. Before that, we have been asking for this in our communities. And so I've told people, if you're a supervisor, what you need to do is get out that police car, get in your personal vehicle late at night and cruise around the city and see what officers are doing.
Yeah.
Someone has got to step up and start fact checking what our law enforcement officials are doing.
Right.
If you have a visible presence, crime naturally will reduce. It doesn't mean harass anybody. It doesn't mean, you know, do what you need to do, but your presence serves a very valued purpose in our communities in reducing crime.
Well, you know, that's why reform is important. Again, the police history, the DNA of the police department, I'm not just talking about Tallahassee, policing in America, period, has not been about waiting or being a presence to deter crime. It's really been about when the crime happens, we're going to pursue you and we're going to bring you to justice. So we have to change the mindset of how the policing is actually done in terms of, hey, there's a police officer, you know, at certain corners just to say, hey, I'm here. You know, if you need help, I'm right here. I'm not behind the bushes waiting for you to, you know, run a red light and then catch. I'm actually here so that you don't run the red light because it's a deterrent. Right. But again, that's going to take training. That's going to take reform, you know, and then part of that reform is, hey, we need to put money back into our schools, into educating our young folks on what it means to be civically engaged, what it means to be active in your community, what it means to be, you know, an asset and not a liability. You know, just like you said, it's a liability when you got people robbing you, you know, houses and cars and stuff. It's a liability. So we need to put things in place to work with our young folks so that they don't think that that's the only thing they have, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and you know, friend, like I told them also, another solution is not going to be just pumping our communities full of officers that look like us, because that doesn't show tolerance when you bump into an officer that is not of the same race and ethnicity that you do. I have told them I'm sick and tired of talking to the brass at this point. They're very receptive, but they're not the ones who patrol my neighborhood. They're not the ones that we see. They're not the ones who have to understand what it is like being black and pulled over. You know, as the other, you know, the thing is, they may see it in a different total lens. So, you know, we have to have exposure of our entire force into the community. Don't just send the chief to community meetings. Send the officers that patrol the neighborhoods. So, you know, don't let this be a department where it's a culture where our officers cannot say something and speak up and let you know when something is wrong. We have to empower the department to be able to police each other. You don't have to be any kind of position to police your fellow officer. If you see something wrong, there should be a mechanism where you feel safe that you can report something
And you
that
can't.
might address some of these bad cops in the department. There's bad apples in every profession.
Yeah.
You group anybody there is not to say anything.
Yeah.
And yes, I will say we have some very great law enforcement officials, some of them that have
Outstanding.
great ideas for the community.
Yeah.
But if the culture doesn't support you bringing your ideas and saying, hey, this may work in this community, then that's something that we have to look at. And again, you know, I know people are going to take this as you're being critical of law enforcement. You don't support law enforcement. No, what we want is better law enforcement and better relationships and better policing within our community. I saw, you know, on the quote where I had corrected it, where it said that, you know, the citizens demand, you know, they give the power of the police and their authority, you know, and I'm like, no, you give the authority in, you know, community policing. We want you to find that authority in community policing. The Constitution gives you your job that you must follow and serve and protect. And, you know, the citizens expect that, but we certainly did not sign up for authority in the form of abuse, authority in the form of, you know, just being racially profiled. No one signed up for that. We'll never give you the authority for that. But what we have signed up for, what we're asking for, is to be treated equally, to be treated with respect, to be given our dignity, and for you all to not just profile somebody or come up with any assertions. I will take this away from the shooting. While I do respect the grand jury's decision, I told leadership today, when I looked at the video, I also had some pause, and I don't want to take for granted what an officer goes through during that situation of having to take somebody's life.
Critical
moment. But there is no excuse in the book that's going to excuse the vulgar language that was used. And the, if you look at it, the preconceived notions that you have of people before you encounter them. Because when you get out of a vehicle and your mental mindset is that this is somebody that I need to take down and this is somebody bad, this is somebody that, you may make a split-second decision that affects your judgment because you have preconceived notions of people. Right. I don't care. Even the criminals deserve common decency and respect. Decency and respect. That is a human being. I think bringing them into conformity with the law is what the citizens have asked you to do, but we want you to do it with decency and respect.
True.
Lisa,
one of the things, and talking to a young law enforcement officer that actually stopped by my office once, she had just graduated. She had a criminal justice degree, and she was saying when she was going through the training, that some of the things that they expected her to react to, she did not, because she was familiar with that culture. That wasn't a red flag for her. So that speaks to, at some point, you got to see how people live, how we communicate with each other, how we, you know, your community might do handshake, our community do fist bump. Somebody else community do high fives, you know, whatever. You have to see the language and how people live so that you understand and you're not scared or fearful of your life because of somebody's statue or whatever it is, a skin tone or whatever it is. But she was saying that she got like reprimanded a few times because that was familiar to her. So it wasn't a thing. But to them, that is no, that's wrong. You shoot to kill. That's the other thing.
Yeah, right.
They're not diffusing. It's like it's no diffusing. It's like, go ahead and let's, you know. And I don't know if I read this on social media or in a news article, but one of the articles was saying that the cop said, "I will kill you."
And it's common. It's common. And again, you
so
know
that you go in like that. I mean, when we talk about Breonna Taylor, you went in, you go in the dead of night when people sleep. To me, you gonna hurt somebody.
Yeah, you know, that was an execution of a warrant that, you know, once again, and I, you know, that's one of our another clients, and it's just like this thing never ends. That was a simple execution of a warrant that had they taken 10 minutes to check, the suspect they were seeking was already in custody. But, you know, I will go back to get to your question as it relates to our community to say this. Diversity is important. One of the first things that I did when I became president of the NAACP is I had to put diversity on the executive committee. And that included law enforcement officials that don't just come into meetings and be in and out. They serve on the executive committee. They put their opinions in and they give law enforcement side of the community. You have whites that are on my board that, you know, they're certainly welcome. One fact about the NAACP that people don't know is that we have our white brothers and sisters that have been critical parts of the NAACP. Our founders, some of our founders are white. So, you know, everybody's welcome. I had one argument with this guy literally cursed us out and said he wasn't welcome. I said, when did you hear that? And if you've never gotten an invitation, come out and see for yourself. You'll find yourself amongst friends because there's going to be every ethnicity. We have Hispanics on our board this year. So at the end of the day, we have almost every walk of life. We have elderly people on our executive committee. And these folks are not here for show. These are people that walk the walk, talk the talk. And they have been longtime executive committee members on this branch, some predating me. So, you know, it's very refreshing to get those opinions from everybody because I may see things one way and then the executive committee sees things another way. But, you know, I think when you have different perspectives, it's very, very, very important. And so for our community, I do think that it is critically important that we work on diversity. You know, Colonel Barnes of the NAACP, he always lets me know. He said, Mr. President, you're the sergeant, but I'm the colonel, and I know your position. But diversity is the issue that we're here to resolve when it comes down to policing. And I think, you know, his point is very, very valid as a World War II Vietnam veteran. I think that he has seen civil rights, and to him, it's a different meaning when you see these patterns repeating themselves year after year. And again, you know, I really pray for our leaders in our community that they have a heart of empathy to understand things that may not directly affect them. And I told everybody, don't take their privilege for granted. If you didn't experience it, you might not have any idea what it is like to be a Black person, what it is like to go day to day, what it is like to be racially profiled. These are things that you and your children may never experience. You can't take a class that can kind of help you comprehend what it is, but you can be genuinely in the community and be advocates and stopping it where you see it, developing a culture where you speak up and say something when you see something.
I do think that
to work itself out. Go ahead, brother.
I do think that a class is part of it. Training is part of it. You may not, you know, it's part of that step that we need to take. Understanding empathy. But there's two words that you stated earlier, which one was respect. We got to respect each other. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, respect. But the other word is responsibility. I share this video with my class and my students. We have the ability, so we must respond, right? We have the ability to do some great things in our community, so we have to respond. Not just as the common citizen, but also all of the people that we elect into, you know, office. It's your responsibility to do these things. So when something comes up, respond to it. That's what, at the end of the day, for me, it comes back to those two words. You have the responsibility, so now be respectful of it, right?
Absolutely.
Do the job that we need you to do so that we can truly be one of the best cities in the country, hopefully leading the charge so that other cities can say, hey, they did it in the capital city. We could do it in Sanford. We could do it in Orlando, Miami, you know, all over the country because it started here.
Right.
Off of those two words.
Yep, respect and responsibility. Absolutely. So let me ask this question. I know we pay attention to a lot of the negative because oh my God, it's so in our face. But what in your presidency and in your time with the NAACP, what progress have you seen that we're most proud of, or that this organization is most proud of?
I think Black lives, standing up for Black lives is a progress where we are no longer accepting the traditional norm. We are challenging authority. We are voting people out that do not support the agenda of the importance of Black lives. And it doesn't matter who your endorsements come from. You can have preacher such and such and this association and the who's who and still be voted out because they only got one vote at the end of the day. They may have influence, but they have one vote. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that there's this thing and it's described to me by these community leaders. It's a new terminology, but it's called old guard and new guard. The old guard patrols and tells the new guard when it's time to take your place. Mm-hmm. And now people are like, you don't get to just come in here and just tell us how to be. And this is a new generation of grassroots people that see a future for us. And we're going to do things in the manner that we see fit at our time. And I think that we're not here to push a political agenda. We're not here to push the establishment's agenda. We are here to make sure that we are breathing, treated equally and treated fairly, and we are advocated for, and we are represented within our government. I will implore the students at Florida State University, FAMU, TCC, you guys have votes, but you must be properly registered in Leon County, and you must go out and vote. It is a detriment to the Black Lives Matter movement if you do not go out and vote. You got to go out and vote. You got to go. That is how we got young leaders such as Andrew Gillum into the city commission in the first place. That's how we got young progressive leaders like Jack Porter into the city commission. And if we keep this up, change will happen, because if people don't get with the program, they should have their bags packed in every election cycle.
Absolutely.
And so we've got to keep good leaders. And I've also will say this: I will commend leaders that don't look like us but absolutely understand us. I commend leaders like Jeremy Matlow. I will say that, for having the audacity to stand up, even sometimes when it is alone. And always leading. He's not just got there, he's been leading. When you look at his track record, when you look at Black Lives Matter, he's on the right side of the issue nearly every single time. Thank him. Because you can't just depend on people that look like us to speak up. I also look not when you're forced to do it, not when it's the last thing that came out, but you should be one of the first people to always stand up.
Right.
Keep true to those promises that you made. When you came to the NAACP campaigning for your support, you made us promises. Keep them. When you needed people to go knocking on doors with you, where was the establishment there? Not knocking on your door.
Right.
You came to the community to get the support. You got our dollars for your campaign. You gave us promises on what you were going to do. You got to hold true to them. And if somebody got it, and let me tell you this, I am a fearful believer. I am not embarrassed to say, if you don't hold true to your word, you're not getting my support again. And I'm going to help amplify your opponent, because I'll take a chance with a demon that I don't know rather than one that smiles in my face.
Yeah.
Period. So that I will leave you all with that, because at the end of the day, we deserve better as the citizens of this city. We deserve better as the citizens of this county. And if you are too scared, you can't pick up the phone as an elected official to call a neighboring elected official and say, hey, I think you got this wrong. Let's sit down and talk. Every decision is not your decision, but that influence you have, you can use for the betterment of this community.
Right.
It may not be your issue, it may not be in your department, may not be in your sector of government, but you have influence. And you need to put your influence in the record. Don't be shy about it. I get a lot of calls as the NAACP president for people who want to quietly be advocates for the community. No, we need your public and vocal support, because Dr. King said silence is as betrayal. Your vocal and notable silence is just as bad as the people that are doing stuff there. Don't let your private support to me over my phone. Go out in the public and let the community see what you see.
Right. Silence is consent.
Listen, I told you today was gonna be a hot topic. I told you,
man, when you were for mayor, you got
a good one today. Look, it's already 10 o'clock. Just like that. Just like that.
But you know what? And one thing I can't leave without saying this. I encourage everybody to join organizations and come and see where you can help and pitch in. The NAACP, as I said, is a volunteer organization. I don't stop people from coming to help with the NAACP. If you don't got money to pay no dues, don't let that be a barrier to you. I've never turned anybody away. If you want to get on a committee, we have tons of committees. There's issues not just going on with this particular topic. We have issues within our school board. We have issues within our education system. We have issues in health disparities, economic disparities. And as I told people don't get up in the morning and say, hey, I want to go sell drugs or I want to commit a crime in my community. They're looking for economic output and economic opportunities within the community. And I definitely support our returning citizens that have come and served their time, and they're looking for new opportunities and new jobs. And unfortunately, the jobs that they are offered, they pay little to none to sustain their lives. And so again, I always welcome people to come out, join the NAACP. If there's anything that I can do, to help you. And if the NAACP is not your organization, I have no problem promoting my sister brother organizations. You have National Action Network here that is president is RB Holmes and Reverend Tolliver there. They do a wonderful job. You have the Urban League, which supports economic development in our Black community. That is with President Curtis Taylor. Definitely find something to get involved in your community and to give back, because that's the council occupying space on this earth.
Absolutely. Hey, Darlene.
Hey, Darlene. Adner, you forgot the Pan Atlantic Council. Can't forget about my Greek community.
So I got two Darlene. To all my D9, shout out to my Alpha brothers and all the members of our D9 sororities and fraternities. Certainly, I served there as a president as well. So certainly appreciate their trust and confidence in my leadership, and I end that term in December as well, so I'm going on a permanent vacation, semi-permanent. But
listen, Adner, as I've learned myself, the work is never done. There's always something that you can do. There's somebody that you can talk to, somebody that you can help. Use your influence, right?
Absolutely.
So use what you can to do and make a difference in our community, because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want a better community, right?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. Listen, the last day to register to vote is October the 5th for the general election. So if you have turned 18, you need to get registered to vote. Right. If you are here in school, just go ahead and I keep having to remind JT that it is nighttime, but it's not after dark. Get registered to vote. Get registered to vote. Get registered to vote. And then after you have gotten registered to vote, early voting starts November 3rd.
October 19th. Early voting is October 19th, not November. That's the general.
Oh, sorry. The vote day is November. It's written on here. Read the bottom ticket.
There you go. And let me say this: on October the 19th, it is very, very critical that you actually get your ballot there. We have seen problem with voter suppression, especially with minority vote, and every single vote works. You got to go out this year and vote early. Go during early voting by October the 19th. Go on day one. Stand in line, guys. You got to do this because it gives us time to cure your ballots in case something is there. Sometimes if your signature is outdated and it doesn't match, they're not going to count your vote. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that if there's something wrong with your vote, you have enough time for the supervisor's elections office to call you and say, let's cure your ballot. So please go out and vote early, because we don't need no nonsense. And again, I'm not going to say nothing political on here, but we need new leadership in the White House, and I'll leave it at that.
So another process is request your ballot for a vote by mail, but drop it off at a precinct.
You have to drop. I would recommend dropping it off at the supervisor of elections.
Yes.
It must be in by 7 p.m. on election day. I would not take it to a precinct. Take it to the supervisor of elections office, because
I took mine to a precinct and it was in. So yes, but definitely, if you don't want to stand in the line, if you know you're gonna have a problem standing in line, go ahead and request your mail in, but take it.
Absolutely. And if you don't get your ballot, if you requested it and it didn't come to you, go to vote.org. They can assist you there, or just contact the supervisor of elections office. Yeah. Both of those that website and the supervisor of elections office can assist you in getting your ballot. It is very important. And if you have not completed the census, please complete the census as well, because that affects the funding going into your community.
Right.
You know, go to fill out the census form. If you didn't get it, go to census.org and get the form filled out and return your census, and make sure that your household is accounted for.
Absolutely. And we well on here, and we talk about voting. Definitely. I don't think we've had a show yet where we haven't mentioned it. So we gotta, we gotta do our part. Talk about civic engagement. That's number one. Definitely. So, all right, guys, we are well past our hour. Thank you so much again. We get very passionate about what's going on in our city. So we found out what's going on. We know that solutions are needed now. So let's put our heads together and come up with solutions, and not just talk about them. I love the fact that you said, I'm tired of talking. Let's get to some action.
Absolutely.
So we are going to be here next week. And Adner, you have to come back sometime, so we got to get you to come back.
I'm welcome. I'm gonna come back whenever y'all need me. Y'all know how to reach me, and definitely, like I said, I know with this group I can't get away from y'all, so I'm stuck.
You are a member of the Kitchen Talk family now, so yep, we'll be calling on you.
Anytime.
So thank you everybody for joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another show. Kitchen Talk CTC.
Conversations that cook.
They cook. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.